First of all, you realize your failure of how perfect you are, if you think you are in marriage. Like you inevitably will fail to love as you should, and you'll realize it. Before you're married, you can have a perfect way of loving your spouse because you don't have one, right? In your imagination. Why that's important is that problem's always been within us. It's just never been tested. So marriage is this testing ground that reveals our own sins and our imperfections, but it's there so we can heal. Whether our spouse is where we are in recognizing that it's a path to healing or not. It's still, if it's you, that's your path for healing. And you pray for your spouse, and God willing, your spouse will figure this out. Maybe be affected by your love. It's a beautiful thing, and it's a mysterious thing. To be a man, it starts with our repentance, living the life of the church as fully as possible in obedience, in humility. I find practically that a lot of the male-female problems we have is you really go down and you have people wanting to stick to their own ideological commitments and to not receive the tradition and be formed by it, but to be often affected by American ideological traditions from the last several decades, and then just kind of want to push that on the church and on ourselves and define themselves according to that. We just need to let that go and let the church. If you're fooling with the mold of the church, you're just being molded according to your self-will. You're not letting the church mold you. The church has the mold to mold you in the image and likeness of Christ, whether you're a man or a woman. And we just need to let that happen.
One thing I wanted to say about, since we got off on this sort of somewhat side topic about marriage and being a husband as opposed to just being a man, something in our culture that I think is very dangerous, and it gets into this topic of what our culture is telling men they're supposed to be, especially when it comes to how they relate to women. My advice to young men who are not married, who are hoping someday to be married, do not make the mistake of thinking that your capacity to woo a potential wife has anything to do with your capacity to love her when she is your wife. Being a great boyfriend and being a husband have almost nothing to do with each other. And the fact of the matter is, the more you work on being that great boyfriend who's great at wooing women, the more trouble you're creating for yourself on the other side of your wedding day. It's not a question of who can keep it up the longest. There will come a day where you can't do that anymore. And frankly, there will come a day where she doesn't want you to do that anymore, because what she really wants you to do is take out the trash, not take her out to dinner for the umpteenth time and buy her something and whatever that was part of your courtship. Marriage is not indefinite courtship. Those are really different things. And I'm not saying you shouldn't court. I'm just saying don't mistake the one for the other, particularly in a culture like ours where people end up, unfortunately, dating lots of people. And so if you've successfully dated lots of women and they all think you're fantastic, you're going to go into your marriage thinking you're fantastic. And that's the worst place you can start, because the skill set you need to be a husband and the skill set you need to woo women are very different things.
And we have to realize we shouldn't expect two things to happen. One is people think that men think that sometimes if I have certain temptations or passions I'm dealing with, when I get married, that'll just take care of all that. No.
If anything, they get worse.
You're bringing that into the marriage. So spend that time before you're married healing from it. When you are married, all of your problems are couple problems. There's no such thing as just a man problem, because it really is two people together. And you always have to assume that your spouse is not going to get any better than that person is now, right? Sometimes we imagine, okay, I know this person doesn't go to church very often. Once we get married or once we have kids or whenever, then things will change, that marriage will somehow profoundly change. We can't, it's not fair to make that assumption. Those are expectations that need to be exposed. And that's why a lot of the expectations that we have, it's good to expose them before marriage and to deal with them and to leave nothing to say, oh, we'll just deal with it once we have kids. We'll just, like, you're completely like spiritually not compatible, like light and darkness, believer and unbeliever, but we'll just put that off at some later time. And that's just not good. I like talking about marriage with regard to men, because many men who are coming to the church are unmarried men who would like to get married.